everybody? Welcome to today's episode of Power at the Podcast. I have with me Flor De Barro owner Andrea Calleros and artist sculptor Christina Maygoitia, and I've invited Richie Marufo to help navigate this podcast because it's four of us, and for the first time, it's a full house, and I'm really going to enjoy this because most times I only have one or two people on this. We're getting ready for a show. When is it? When is the date for your show, Christina?
So I'll be exhibiting there October 16th, which is a Friday at 6 p.m. And we'll be unveiling a Tom Lee world map that documents all of his travels.
Okay, awesome. And you want to tell me a little bit about the show and what's how that's transpiring, the preparation behind that. What? Okay, better yet. Let me frame this. How did you end up getting this show at your gallery?
It was actually thanks to you.
What? That was a loaded question. Yeah. That was an alley-oop to myself.
That was
Sure
good.
was, man.
Yeah, Christina called me and she's like, "Oh, Valentin recommended you." I'm like, "Great, let's meet."
Yeah.
That's
And you know what? I had seen I followed your social media page, and I just like the photography. I love the pottery work that you were displaying, and when Christina had approached me to just to see what direction to take, I immediately thought of your place, and I'm glad that it was able to happen the way it happened, and I'm glad you guys were able to connect, and this is happening the way it's happening. Andrea, talk a little bit about the genesis of your gallery. Like, what inspired you to open up the gallery that you have?
Okay, so basically, back in 2018, my parents are avid travelers. They collect art, especially ceramics. My dad came back from Turkey with some pieces, and he was like, "We don't have any Mexican pieces, and we're Mexican." And it was true. So he was like, "You know what? Mata Ortiz is 3.5 hours away from here. It has world-known potters. We should take a trip down there. We haven't been there for, if I want to say, 11 years. Let's see what we find." I didn't get to go to that. And when he came back with my mom, they were amazed at what they saw and how nice all the artists were. I mean, you go into their houses and they just open up the doors for you, and they're like, "Yes, come into my studio. Come see what I'm doing." So my dad had this crazy idea, and he said, "You know what? We're gonna open a gallery.
Right.
Are you in?" So I went to school for media advertising, so I do have in marketing, so I do have that background. And he's like, "Okay, let's do it. You'll take care of all of that. I'll put in the money." And that's how it really started. I mean, it was just kind of like one of those ideas that you have, and it's kind of like you jump on it or you don't. And so that's what we did, and that happened maybe July of 2018. By November, we had already registered the name, and we were ready to start, and by March, we were open. So it was just a crazy idea that kind of turned out for the best. It's the best thing that's really ever happened to me, this gallery. It's amazing.
Yeah, right on. Yeah, I love hearing that story. Oftentimes, people see the need for something but don't act on it because oftentimes it's a risk.
Yeah.
And I'm sure you've had highs and lows as part of this, but it's cool to see a nice team up like this happening right now with Christina as well. And you mentioned at the beginning of the show, like the project that you'll be bringing, but I think to maybe kind of fill in some context, this is part of the Tom Lee Institute, right? They offered you a what is it?
It's a fellowship.
It's a fellowship.
They have it every year, and I remember Christina when I went to her show where you won for the best sculpture piece,
Right, at UTEP, right over at UTEP.
What year was? Give the
that
specifics
was,
on that.
So that was the UTEP student juried art show, and that was in 2019. And it was in 2019, and I did win best of sculpture that show. That show had a piece. It was a Che Femme Guevara. It was a shadow piece. So yeah, I think from there it definitely gave me the confidence to pursue other passions in the art world and to keep progressing. And so yeah, so then the year after that, I applied to the Tom Lee Fellowship, and Yeah, I was selected as a Tom Lee Fellow for 2020, and it has a research component and an artistic component. So on the 16th, that's what I will be unveiling is that work from these months. And so essentially, yeah, essentially what it will be is it will be a documentation of Tom Lee's travels throughout his life. But when I document it, I'll be documenting it through a post-colonial and more feminine lens, because I'll be using textiles and I'll be using indigenous motifs to decorate the map. So it'll be acknowledging all of the First Nations all around the world, and it'll still be documenting Tom Lee's travels. So it'll be a nice fusion and nice hybrid of multicultural energy there, and it'll also be a written component, which where I'll talk about what it means to be a global citizen then and now. And what I really mean with then and now is then as Tom Lee as a white privileged male, and maybe my travels as a Latina who backpacks through the world. So it'll be a nice contrast of energy there, and that's what I'll be unveiling that day.
I couldn't be more excited and happy for you, because I remember, just Power at the Pass has been around for going on 4 years, and you and mutual friend Laura, Bustillo,
Laura
she's
Bustillo,
she's the
right.
one that brought you into the equation here, and so I seen you grow, throughout the past couple
The
of years.
development of me even starting at UTEP, because when we met, I wasn't a student yet. I was still kind of, I was already into the arts and I was already an artist, but I didn't have that confidence to pursue it at on an academic level. And so, yeah, you've seen that growth and that component of it as well. So yeah, so it's, and I worked on the piece here as well. So
Yes.
it has a special relationship with Power at the Pass. Absolutely.
Yeah, and one of the things that the reason how I was able to connect you two was we work with Holly and Tanya Schwartz, and we're just thinking of ways to collaborate and utilize the mechanism that we have here and the opportunity that I have with the space and with my partnership with Don Shapiro and just the different tentacles of what Power at the Pass is, and one of the ways that we do that is through understanding that media and art and content creation is a living, breathing mechanism that has a nebulous life that I just intend to focus and navigate each day and make these kinds of connections, and so I couldn't be prouder of what's going on. Let's talk a little bit about the burgeoning, the shifting of the art scene in El Paso. I mean, it's been around, for as long as the city's been around, right? It's always been a cultural hotbed of creativity, and a lot of really brilliant and awesome, talented people who have come out of the region. But I think as of late, there's been a resurgence, and the younger generation has been able to really, put their arms around that and gain an identity and build upon that. And so, one of the things that I really appreciate is that El Paso is really putting itself on the map, and with projects like Galeria Lincoln, with what Tino and Diego are doing, with what other galleries are out there? It's just Cholo Gallery, right?
Cinco Puntos.
Cinco Puntos, yeah, with Edward Nathaniel and what he's done with that whole Piedras district is like super cool, right?
Yeah,
Like,
he revolutionized that Piedras district essentially. Even before Cinco Puntos was a thing.
when he was a barista at JVB, he was
just
already
his
lobbying.
presence there was
Yeah.
already, yeah. There's some people that do have that catalyst kind of presence, and so yeah, I think it's really nice to see that happening, and I think it's happening over at your place too. I mean, with your story and the kind of art, the kind of world class art that you're bringing to El Paso. And having it there, I mean, that's also an amazing way to evolve the culture here and the art culture, because having world class art at a local gallery is something that definitely is revolutionizing the energy here of the art world. Absolutely.
And this is a question for you, Andrea, here that myself and my friend and associate Jay Lomeli have come up with. What are some of the elements or themes of contemporary ceramics and pottery in northern Mexico and the borderland that are unique and compared to its southwest peers? In other words, what's the niche, and who are some of the potters and ceramic artists that you're representing at your gallery?
Right. So we actually represent, I want to say, over 50 artists. Yeah, we get around Matortiz, and we handpicked all of our pieces, and that's kind of how we do it. We're, I want to say, not that traditional as it is as a gallery, just because of the way that we choose the art and the way that we handle things. The question was,
Okay, what are in other words, better yet, let's talk about Juan Quesada
okay,
and Laura Bugarini and Hector Gallegos. For those of us that don't know who they are,
yeah.
tell us about them.
So kind of like, okay, so the question was kind of like how's it evolved and it's how it's different, right?
Mhm.
So let me just, I guess, put that in. So for Mata Ortiz, so this is, because this is a question that I get a lot. And so Mata Ortiz art in itself is very different from just traditional pottery, you could say, just because it really developed, I want to say, from the 80s and on. Like that's when it really had its explosion. And Mata Ortiz is different from the Paquimé style just because not only is it not from direct descendants, it is inspired on it. Artists have developed their own different styles. So while you can still see a lot of motives that come out in traditional art, like the serpent or like the macaws and that kind of stuff, they have evolved. For example, we have Laura Bugarini, who does kind of like a, I guess I would call it like a mandala style. And this is like little tiny designs on it, repeating, usually painted. And her husband, she does a very similar style, but in a graffito style. And so a lot of people will see it and they're like, well, this is not really that traditional. This is not the Paquimé style. And it's like, no, this is the Mata Ortiz style. And Mata Ortiz means anything. Whatever your vision is, that's what it is. It's gathering the clay from the area, sourcing the materials from the area, learning from your parents and your grandparents. But at the end of the day, it's whatever vision you have for your art. That's what Mata Ortiz is.
That's great.
Oh.
Okay. Let me see. What about Fernando Himon Melchor? He's an
Melchor.
yeah. How do you say it?
Himon Melchor?
Melchor.
Yes.
Okay, is an example of an artist whose art carries traditions that are passed down directly from his family, which differs from Juan, whose inspiration from Paquimé art was founded in his accidental discovery of pottery from Mimbres and Casas Grandes. Paquimé is a village. Okay, so that's a little side note from me. Can you talk a little bit about Himon and what your background, your information is on him?
Mm-hmm. So, for example, okay, so I guess the way I would compare them, in a way, it's kind of like if Juan Quesada is kind of like the beginning of where it started, and families like Himon, and we also have Sergio Velázquez from Santa Clara del Cobre. His families has been doing it from generations, and the people in the town have been doing it ever since pre-colonial times. And so I guess they are different in that sense where it's like Mata Ortiz kind of like sparked out of nothing. And these other families that you see are the traditional families that have been working since maybe like I want to say like the beginning of the last century.
Okay.
And so he's located in Tonalá, and he is an artist that has won many national awards when it comes to ceramics. He's one of the newer artists, so I still need to do a little bit more research
Right.
on him. Yes, but
Okay. Okay. Cool. Let me see. So part of the style that I was telling Richie, and with what I want to do with this podcast is do insertions. Sort of like as we're communicating here, I'm gonna go into some of the research, some of the history, and just almost like a narration within the podcast itself. So we go from our conversation style here into putting context of what the history is. So for those who don't know, and they'll be able to have more of a direction. So a lot of this is going to be edited and put together because this is a lot of research
Okay,
here,
okay.
and I don't want to overwhelm myself or anybody here because this is good, but I want to contextualize it here. Go ahead. Do. You're laughing. Do expound on the laughter
That's how I want to start the podcast. Just like
with that laugh right there.
Good-
Keep
good
it.
laugh.
Put a
With a great
reverb on that.
Oh,
It'll-
y'all
yeah,
too
yeah,
much.
yeah.
I
a fine
can't.
laugh is a beautiful thing. Best way to start anything.
You know what I'm hearing though, from what I'm hearing from your responses and from Valentine's questions is what I feel is happening at Mata Ortiz from somebody that has never been there but is interested in that kind of artwork and in the history of it, that it's something that has ancestral roots, but it's being used in a contemporary way by allowing people that artistic that artistic freedom to go ahead and put whatever motifs they want to put on there, as opposed to just sticking to the traditional motifs. And I think it is really culturally relevant to think about Mata Ortiz, because those are the ancestors of this area, from the Mimbres Valley to Paquime and that whole cauldron. That is where our ancestral lineage in this area specifically comes from. So I think it's amazing that you're also honing in on that.
Yeah, and I mean, Paquime was just such an important city. I mean, people left the area in the early 1400s, right before colonization started. And Paquime was just like a merchant cultural center where it united, the Mesoamerican cultures with the North American ones. And it's like, it was so unique in that sense.
Nah, I'm getting goosebumps as you're saying that, because it's true. Like, that was like the cauldron of hybridization of the North America to the more southern parts of Mexico and stuff, but before colonial times, like you're saying. So that's great. I also think that in Chaco Canyon, they were both like that cauldron of mixing of the cultures, and I think that's really powerful that you're saying that. Yeah, that's great.
Yeah, so that segues perfectly into this question, which was probably already answered. But due to the violent nature of the history between Mesoamericans and Spanish colonizers, and the intentionally attempted cultural suppression of Mesoamericans, do you find irony that the two share a stage at Flor and in the heart of Mexican artists and Mexican culture? Or not even just Flor, just here in the frontera. Like let's all kind of expound on that, because I know both of you guys all of us could have something to say about that.
Right. I mean, I just think, yes, I guess that you could say that it's ironic that these two cultures that, unfortunately, the indigenous people in Mexico suffer so much and still do. I mean, there's still people who are not treated as first-class citizens in Mexico, and you see that everywhere. They belong to maybe the poorest class in Mexico. Yeah, I find it, I guess, yes, I would find it very ironic that it is their culture, I guess, that was mixed with the Spanish. How would I put it? Hold on, let me just.
No. It's cool.
Let me restart.
Yeah.
Yeah. It's a delicate topic. It is
Absolutely.
a delicate topic that we need to try.
And you think about it too. I mean, that's just the case in most art in general.
Yes.
Like even in Santa Fe, in Albuquerque, a lot of the galleries there. I mean, there's a certain monetization of the culture of the Lakotas and the Navajos and the Hopi up there. I mean, that's sort of like the name of the game. Irony
Yes.
is inherent.
It's one of those things that you need to tread carefully between. I was talking to Christina earlier about that, about giving the proper representation, the proper respect to indigenous cultures in Mexico. So you're not just monetizing from it, but you're representing and you're exposing other people to it. And that's one of the things that I really want to do with the gallery. So right now, for example, I mean, most of the people in Mata Ortiz are mestizos, right? So, for example, I don't like to speak for them, and I like to bring them into our gallery and show what they're about, show their work process, show everything. And that's kind of what I would really like to do with everything.
Right.
Bring the actual artisans into the gallery, have them tell the story, have them show their culture, not just me, being just like a mouthpiece. Like, I want them to be able to do that. So yes, it's ironic but that's what our culture is. At the end of the day, I think a lot of us that's something that we have to understand, and we need to accept that maybe many at the hands of our ancestors have suffered, and we need to do better when it comes to that, because at the end of the day, that's our culture. I mean, we can't really separate it too much.
And really, that's sort of the name of the game in terms of what I think the value proposition of what El Paso and La Frontera and Juarez can have in the bigger picture of the art world, and that's the portal and the entryway from South American cultural mores and the ramifications thereof, right? And how to create a system and of not just the word monetizing it, but of industry generation and adding value to the complexities of the human lived experience. And I think that's ultimately what is happening with your gallery. And I think because we have to create identity and we have to make an attempt, a sincere and intelligent attempt at creating an industry and a name globally for for what La Frontera is. And then I think the best case scenario of what El Paso and Juarez is in the Pantla, which is an entryway, a portal from north to south and not south to north. That's the value proposition, is the middle ground from that the north doesn't have, that Albuquerque and Santa Fe respectively, because that's a home away from home from me, and leading on into Denver and Colorado into the north, and that's what El Paso has, is being that pathway, that thoroughfare, and so I think that adds layers and depths to the augmentation of what a gallery is and can be, and how to bring the world attention to us.
Yes, I mean, at the end of the day, what I really hope to eventually be is just it's a platform for the artists that I was telling you when I met you about how we're trying to bridge that mental gap that a lot of people have.
All right, hold that thought. Hold that thought.
Yeah, that's what I meant earlier about it falling.
Yeah, all right. Steal the show. No, I'm kidding. No.
It's okay, you're giving
It's
me
too
time to
it's
think
too
about
early
my
for a
answer.
mic drop, okay?
We haven't gotten to that part of it yet.
Yeah, although we've gotten pretty close to some already,
You're good.
It's actually not all the way in. Like you can push it further.
Oh yeah.
Like
Let me loosen it for.
So sorry about that. I don't know why I touched it. That
No
was
way.
not good.
It's all good. It gives us time to.
yeah, I think that should. Good. See if we can push it further. You don't. In fact, you can take it out right now. Take it out of it.
Take what out of it?
Yeah. Take that
This,
part.
like with this.
Yeah, yeah.
Gotcha.
And then you can. Oh, right.
All right, thank
Cool.
you so
And
much.
then just push that one all the way against the surface. Yeah, and then.
There we go. Here's the tape.
Sweet. And then you Sweet.
Okay, you wanna
Hang tight.
segue into what I was thinking of going next would be into Rufino Tamayo. You wanna finish your thought and go into that, or where do you feel most comfortable segueing into? Or can also
Sounds,
be
noises. Mic check. Sounds.
one of the other questions. I don't know if it's a little bit too, but maybe because of religious mythology. Or
Not
religious
doing it.
preserves, as you said, for
It's a
artists.
little.
Try and just.
Yeah, there you go. Add it from the bottom.
It didn't hit me though. Don't worry.
How about we maybe go into this one here?
Don't worry. I'll figure this out. Yeah,
You
yeah,
know
yeah.
what?
The origins of the
'Cause it was
Maybe going back to
Yeah.
the top.
which is well known to
Even-
Like,
Spanish.
I think it was
That's
just like
fine,
that.
yeah, you
There,
can just
it
do
was just
that.
like that. Yeah,
Given the
yeah.
title
Okay.
mestizo.
There, I won't touch it anymore.
Because
Mic check.
the level you had it was good right now.
Yeah,
That's
mic
kinda
check. Mic
like-
check.
I feel like that
Distance.
ties into what we're talking about. No,
Right.
like I guess. Should we go ahead?
And
Okay.
also I don't know if you could probably move the mic a little like closer,
You
like
want to give me your
in-
phone?
that?
lined up.
I'll film.
Yeah, a little
Yeah,
closer,
yeah,
but
yeah,
also
yeah.
lined
That's what I
up,
was saying for me.
like
It's
closer to your mouth, because
The
it's a little bit
code
to the
is
side.
9595.
Oh no, not that's the
95,
windscreen. The
95.
actual
Oh,
microphone.
I'm sorry.
Yeah. Yeah, there you go.
You can tell I'm not
Like that.
radio trained or anything.
Ah, just like karaoke.
Yeah.
Bam.
All right.
Okay, no
Yeah,
more
we're
touching
good.
anything. yet.
Okay. Yeah, I guess so.
Nothing happened.
Yeah, nothing happened. Just a small commercial break. We're back.
Okay, action.
Okay. So I guess what I was going into was, what we're really trying to do also is bridge this mental perspective that we have when it comes to artisans and artesanía in Mexico. And the bridge between that and fine art. Because what many of these people do, it's fine art. It's beautiful, it's intricate, it's meaningful, and it takes a lot of time to come up with these beautiful pieces. And I think a lot of people are still in the mentality of not paying the full amount of work and creativity when it comes to indigenous art and art from Mexico in general. I think a lot of us still see it as artesanía. Like, I can still, haggle the artist, not pay. And it's like, no, like, we need to start seeing these people as the fine artists that they are. And so that really is what I'm trying to do, give it that platforms for people to come and see it and be like, and admire it for what it is.
Absolutely. And, I think in retrospect, when historians look back at what they would call folk art or craft art,
Jesus. Sorry. You want to go from the top?
They always kind of end up finding that.
Hold on. I
Yeah.
don't know. I didn't touch anything. I'm gonna just take.
But yeah, what we were saying, the
Mike.
when historians look back in time, they often find that folk art or craft art is actually where a lot of the recording of the actual feelings of the actual tangents that were happening at the time, where they're actually recorded, because it's not like it's not a piece that is been polished, it's a piece that has the raw reality alive. So I find that fine art and craft is a really rich place to look back on. And what would be even better is if we start appreciating that in the present moment. So I think that that's where you come in, and it's to bring that fine art level, because fine art isn't just somebody that's been trained academically. Fine art is somebody that has fine tuned into what the craft and honed into what they're doing. So academia has nothing to do with the fact that you're a fine artist or not. It's more with the mentality, like you're saying. And so, yeah, providing this place where that attitude is shifted, I think, is of paramount importance. And a little bit back on the conversation that we were having before some of the malfunctions. Something that I think about often is about the fact that when we got colonized, and I say we because it's in our lineage, it's in our DNA. What ended up happening is the Spaniards and the indigenous people had a language barrier. They could not communicate. And in my opinion, this is where art as a form of Esperanto comes in, because in my opinion, art is the Esperanto of the world. It is the universal language.
Can you? I don't know what Esperanto means.
To elaborate on that, Esperanto is like this utopian idea that the whole world could speak the same language, and that language would be Esperanto. And so there is no such thing in our modern day world except what I would like to think of art, because art and symbols, like anybody can recognize a symbol whether you speak whatever language. So based on that thought, something that happened with the colonizers is they used art as a means to train indigenous people into Catholicism. So they did they took a lot of the works and a lot of the materials that indigenous people were already using, but instead of depicting Mesoamerican deities, they started depicting Catholic deities, Jesus Christ, the Virgin. And so they used art as a tool for colonizing. And what I think the way that we can flip the script in a post-colonial narrative would be to use art to decolonize, to use some of the stuff that we have learned from Western techniques to bring them into new techniques and into indigenous art. And also not indigenous art, but I guess what I'm trying to express is that I feel like if we got colonized through art, then we can also get decolonized through art. And it's through practices like this of honoring the First Nations and the indigenous communities that do this kind of art. So, yeah, I think that's really powerful what you're doing, and I'm really grateful to be a part of your place now by having a show there. I think it is a great collaboration.
Thank you. We're honestly really excited to be doing this. I mean, I'm really excited to be seeing your piece, especially when you told me the Mexico part was going to be inspiring Matt Ortiz. That's amazing. I would really love to see that.
I love what you just said, Christina, because ultimately I think, first of all, I don't think we were colonized through art. I think we were colonized through through violence and force. But art was definitely
okay. You're right. Art was one of the components. You're absolutely right. We were colonized through violence, through death.
Yeah.
Through
It was one
ways.
of like the propagandic techniques that were used. But I think what I think when you say indigenous, to me, I think indigenous is. How is one indigenous within the urban fray? Because what's the indigenous within El Paso and Juarez? How is Richie's platform? One of the reasons why I've always supported him through the Barbed Wire Open Mic series is because it's really about creating a voice and putting for me, my first book about my mom, her being from Juarez with a third grade education, I think and the complexities and the tragedy and the beauty of her story. Is also an indigenous urban, and within the context of an urban experience, and I think what we're doing is bringing together common ground. I think galleries are the common ground, the bridge at its best. A gallery can be a bridge for not to call anybody call out anybody like, oh, academia is like the ivory tower, or like the street is this. I think it's ultimately when people are at their best and they're tapped into and then turned on, I think they're able to understand that academia is doing its job, as is, the artist doing its job, and the trials and the tribulations on both sides is the practice of having a gallery, of having a space, of being an artist. And I think why we're all here is because we're all bettering the craft, and bettering what we're doing. And I think it really is a erudite period for El Paso to really be bold in these times. And you're feeling that you're creating that niche, in terms of, like, again, what got my attention. And I was joking earlier when I said I really did think, because I'm like dyslexic in some ways, and I'm not, but not to dismiss, but it's really when I read, I read fast. I thought Flor De Barrio. I thought Barrio.
Flor De Barrio.
I thought
Yeah.
what a like what a play on words, right? Until I realized, no, it's not Flor De Barro, and I'm like, oh, it's actually the clay, right?
Yeah,
And
you gave me an idea for a cooler name, but
no, like,
Or for a show.
or for a
Yeah,
show,
yeah.
like that's where you can,
Yeah.
create the indigenous within the urban, and it's awesome because we need, when people talk about lowbrow and highbrow, I'm like, well, brows are only relevant in the context of a face, and I think the overall face, I think you are creating a highbrow, take on art in El Paso that's accessible to the rest of the face, and I appreciate that, and so yeah, I just wanted to add that point. Anything you want to add to that, Richard?
Yeah, I like what you both said earlier. Well, three of you said right now, but all two of you said earlier in terms of fine art and in terms of, yeah, kind of dismantling the notion that fine has to mean wealth, upper class, education, but rather fine tuned, which opens it up to a lot. And as you said, Andrea, that it's about creating these platforms, right? These spaces in which we can kind of again give what's due, right? And then just allow these spaces of dialogue. That's kind of the best thing about art, right? Is the way it's able to connect ideas through time and from the past into the future, right? It's that kind of that postmodern angel looking backward to the past but moving forward into the future. And that's a really interesting way of reconciling, as you were saying, Christina, right now, in terms of using it to decolonize, right? Taking the, what I mean, I don't know if I like the phrase in this way, but like the master's tools, right? But I mean, no, it's not even the master's tools. It's taking our own agency, right? That's really what it is. And I'm incredibly excited. I know when I had heard about your gallery and you had mentioned, the artist and from Paquimé, I was really excited because I had mentioned before that, my family, I have family from that region, and I'd been wanting to take my mom to go see it, and I think that's important for a lot of people who can connect in some way to that past, where maybe they can't go back there anymore. It's just there's that connection isn't there to a physical place they can go to, or that family's gone, but the memories are there, the ancestral DNA is there.
yes, that's one of the things that we're trying to do. I think a common experience, I think, of growing up. I grew up in North Mexico, in Chihuahua. Is that we are very separated from the rest of our culture. Like, we don't really celebrate Dia de los Muertos. We don't celebrate a lot of things that are so inherent to Mexican culture. And that's another thing that I wanted to connect back. When we opened the gallery, I said, like, we need to have all these events where we can bring people that also have not been exposed to this type of culture and not only learn ourselves, but also teach them. So, for example, last Day of the Dead, we had an altar. We dedicated it to my grandpa, who was really ultimately the main inspiration for the gallery. He was a self-taught artist. He became a historian, a writer. His books are at the UTEP library.
What's his name?
Yeah, give him a shout out.
Yeah.
Pascual Garcia Orozco. That's his name.
Nice.
So you can find his books, and he writes a lot of Mexico history, Northern history, and he also has some historical fiction books in there. And so he only got to go to third grade. school, and after that he had to drop out, and he was self-taught, self-made. He was an electrician most of his life. He fixed radios, that kind of stuff. But he always had this inherent love for his country and for his culture and for learning and for art. And so I think he gave me and my cousins some of the best childhood of just using your imagination, finding it everywhere in rocks, finding figures wherever you could. So he is who we dedicated our first altar of Day of the Dead. And so I opened it up. We had hot chocolate. We had pan de muerto. We explained the meaning of Day of the Dead, and we actually had two women come in with, I want to say, 4 or 5 little kids, and this is the first time they had ever tried pan de muerto, which for me it's like something I wait for the whole year, every year.
Yeah,
I'm
it's
like,
so
I'm
good.
waiting
Yeah,
for it,
yeah.
And so that's what we're trying to do. Like they were so excited to see the altar, to eat, to drink the hot chocolate,
To
and just
dip the pan de muertos in the
Yes.
hot chocolate. Yum.
So good. Yeah, and so that's what it's about to me. It's like really bridging that gap that you sort of live behind when you become an immigrant, or even in your own country. Growing up in the north, we don't really have that, and that's really, really what I want to do as well. Just connect people to their past, just like you were saying.
Check. I like the phrasing of this. Part of like what I was talking about on the way I'm gonna edit the podcast was I'm gonna cut away to this. I think cut away because I'm as a filmmaker, but the origin Mexican culture is well known to be a unique brew of Spanish and Mesoamerican influences. It's so prevalent as to be given the title mestizo. In the current landscape where we have cancel culture and this notion of cultural appropriation, do you run into political complications exploring modern and contemporary art that transcends those cultures and temporal boundaries that seem prevalent in today's identity politics? Does it seem to polarize or unify? And that's for all of us, really. Like I think that's a summation of what we've been talking about, and what I think that's just what is happening more so now than ever, and so what's your thought on that, Rich?
So, Adrian texted me while you were saying that, and I was responding. Can you repeat that question?
It's more of
I-
more
I-
of a statement than it is a question.
I heard about like
Well,
polarizing.
yeah, like okay, let me see here. I'll go to the part of. Do you run into political complications exploring modern and contemporary art that transcend those cultural and temporal boundaries that seem prevalent in today's identity politics?
Okay.
Does it seem to polarize or unify?
Yeah, I mean we were totally just talking about all that right now, right? I mean, I feel like we've encapsulated that opportunity for us to connect through this specific art, and I'm completely amazed to what you're doing with this fellowship to take something, because I think they might be listening, but some people can kind of criticize the whole like Tom Lee, through wealth, being kind of upper class, and but taking the context, I actually really like what you said earlier about taking the context of his travels earlier on, and then kind of juxtaposing it with yours, and through such experience we can learn so much about not just the past, but where we are now and where we might be heading. And I really do want to hear your thoughts on that narrative.
So for me, I mean, and also to brush up on something that you said earlier about having agency when we create, something that really keeps coming back. I read a poem by this woman, and I can't remember her name right now, and I'm so sorry, but she finishes the poem with the phrase, "We are the colonized and the colonizer. We're both, as mestizos. We're both." So it's like, what is our responsibility in that? And like you and I were talking earlier about cultural appropriation. Well, there is a difference between cultural appropriation and cultural appreciation, and the decisive thing here is the research, the history, the intention that you have behind it. And so I think with honoring all those things, you kind of you unify instead of polarize, like what your question was. There is a way to unify the indigenous, the colonized, and the colonizer. There is a way to unify that notion, and that not only helps the narrative at large, it helps our internal narrative, because I find it sometimes problematic in my own thoughts to be like, I have this indigenous blood, but I also have this other blood that is not indigenous, and so I find it worthwhile to reconcile both of those things for ourselves and for our community. And I think engaging in art and in research and in having the gallery for you, Andrea, is a great way to bridge that gap internally and externally for our communities. So I think, yeah, I think that's a responsibility as a mestizo, as a woman, a creative, a creator, a thinker. It's our responsibility to bridge that gap and unify. So, yeah, I definitely do find that everybody here has taken it upon themselves to do that in one way or another. So I think maybe that's why we're all united here today.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean that's something that I try to be really careful about, because I am conscious, like you said, we're both the colonizer and the colonized. But as a white skinned woman in Mexico, I recognize that I need to honor these cultures by, like I said, giving them the platform and not speaking for them. So that's really what I'm trying to do, and trying to educate myself, because it's like we can all say like, oh, we have native blood, but it's like, but I don't know their culture. I am not part of it. Like I'm not, their practices don't hold the significance to me that it does to them, because it's theirs. And so I think that's one of the things, like being conscious of where you belong, and at the same time, just understanding the role that you play in this system.
Right.
Socially.
Understanding, like, yeah, like, okay, I could have native blood, but I'm not indigenous.
Exactly.
Like, I didn't grow up in an indigenous community. So even though I have that blood, I can't really claim to say I'm indigenous, of course.
Exactly.
And that's a really important thing to say. Like, you can say, I've studied indigenous culture. I've maybe, like how you say when you and your family go up into the mountains and you go see it, but at the same time, it's, of course, like, we're not, like, we're urban, we're already in the urban scape, we're already in a different dimension, but that doesn't mean that we can't honor it. So I think, like what you were saying earlier too, about bringing, you said you brought Laura, how do you say her last name?
Oh, Laura Bugarini.
Laura Bugarini to the gallery and providing that platform. I think that's a great part of that bridging that gap, and like what you're saying, to realize where in the map we're at. Yeah, and not just physically. Absolutely.
Yeah, I mean, and just giving a platform to everybody, like that's another thing that we try to do, give a platform to as many women as we do to men, because that's another gap that exists in the art world and anywhere else that you look.
Oh yeah, absolutely. Women have been underrepresented in the art world for years and years and years, and so yeah, I think it's great that women are gaining visibility, momentum, track, and not just for being a woman, but because there's also worthwhile art to be created by both genders. Yeah, absolutely. So yeah, so that's also another reason why I was really happy to collaborate with you, is because I'm making this piece that is a post-colonial feminist theory. I want to exhibit it, somewhere that is in tune with that, and that's when I was reading your mission, when I talked to you, when I saw your space on the virtual tour, I was like, yeah, this is absolutely somebody that I would like to collaborate with. So it's great that you're providing that platform for us as well.
Oh, well, honestly, thank you for giving us a chance. And, that's another thing, like Matortis, it's, I think it's like a great example of like post-colonial art. Like I said, like people in Matortis are indirect descendants. They're mestizos as well. And they have they have that, like this mix of art inspired by our indigenous cultures, and then you can still see like many Catholic, Christian themes in it as well. For example, we have a nativity scene in the Matorti style.
Right.
So
I saw
like
that
you
on
have
your
that
page.
mix,
Yeah.
And like another thing that we're also trying to do is kind of, because we do have a lot of, I guess, Catholic representation in our gallery.
Right.
We actually commissioned the first menorah in the Matorti style.
Nice.
And it turned out beautiful. It's already in somebody's home. But that's kind of what we're trying to do, like kind of like be more inclusive in every sense that we can, and make sure that everybody feels comfortable when they go to the gallery. And like I said, like just we're trying to be as respectful as we can towards all the different cultures that you find in Mexico, because it's also not like a monolithic like culture.
Absolutely. It's like so mixed and so eclectic. And yeah, so for example, you said that you grew up in Chihuahua, where a lot of the indigenous community that we see there are the Raramuri or the Tarahumara. And so, but that's still different from here from Juarez, because in Chihuahua, you're closer to the mountains and closer
Yes.
to that community. So here, you know, it's also honing into to the ancestral communities of Juarez and El Paso in this specific area. So yeah, I think that's very worthwhile that you're going in that direction. And then like what you're saying about the menorahs, so it's like a multicultural ensemble of many cultures. And if you really think about it, the way that we're heading now and how we're becoming, some people say that globalization is a bad thing because they think of it in an economic term, but globalization is a great thing when you think about it in a humanitarian term. Because when you think about it as an economic thing, like, oh, they're outsourcing jobs, they're paying less,
The
their exploitation. Okay, yes, the economic aspect of globalization is problematic, but the humanity and the humanities aspect of it is beautiful, because the more that we can become culturally attuned to not just our ancestors but the ancestors of the world, I think that it also bridges a gap between our patterns and our ways of thinking, because now we realize that something that we do here can affect somebody and the other side of the world now or 500 years from now, because we're all realizing and we're all becoming more aware of how our actions do affect everybody on a global level. Now we have obviously the internet that can connect ideas at a way faster rate. So I think that this is a product of all of that collective consciousness that is going on, is that hybridization of cultures and bridging the gap between all that. And at the end of the day, that is really what's going to break down barriers, is knowledge, and is that camaraderie that you have with people, just because like, oh, this is their history, this is their lineage. It's not something foreign anymore. It's something that you learn, that you know about. And it's the same. You're also opening that door for somebody from Asia or from Russia or from somewhere else to learn about our culture, and then bridge that gap as well. So
Bridges.
it's a two-way street. It's a two-way, yeah. So I do think that plays a role.
Yeah, damn. Earlier you mentioned the phrase, and I love it. I had kind of read about cosmopolitanism before, but you're talking about being a citizen of the world, right? I don't know if you want to kind of expound on that, because you mentioned it a little earlier on at the beginning of the show.
So yeah, I mean, being a citizen of the world is knowing your roots, but knowing that you can go anywhere. Like, I think a lot of the times we limit ourselves and being like, oh, I can't go to Singapore or I can't go to Japan. And it's like, well, yeah, I mean, really, yes, you can. Like, we all can. Like, we all can. We just have to want to do it. And so being a citizen of the world doesn't only mean getting on a plane and going to Japan. It means opening your mind and learning about other cultures, seeing what they're about, seeing their history, seeing how they developed, and seeing it in a greater scope. Because once you start learning about different cultures, you start seeing that we're all not so different. You were talking about Dia de los Muertos earlier in the altar, and they have a flower, the cempasúchil, which is super iconic. When I see that flower, all I could ever think about was the altars and Dia de los Muertos. Well, fast forward to 2019, or I guess back forward, since we're in 2020.
Back forward, I like that.
Back forward.
There's that postmodern angel again.
And I'm in Thailand, and I see these things called spirit houses, and they have cempasúchil on them. And I'm like, how am I 2,000, 5,000 miles from my house, but I'm seeing the same flower? And it's because we are all so more connected than we care to realize. And that's what being a global citizen is realizing how connected we truly are.
Yeah, truly understanding the human experience, because at the end of the day, we all go through the same things. It's just being open to accepting that. And that's, I think it's a lot, like, very difficult for some people. For example, one of the things that I really like is being able to bring that, like, little bits of our culture into other people that had no idea. So we had people walking through our gallery saying, like, oh, I saw you online. It's you're an art museum. I just wanted to check it out. And I was like, okay, cool. Are you familiar with this type of art? Because, I mean, most of our galleries cover in Matortis. We have from many other places, but Matortis is really our main.
Right, that's your niche.
Exactly. And so I started explaining them the story, how it all started, how it's inspired from Paquimé, what Paquimé was, how Juan stumbled into a cave and found, dead bodies that had been left there from Paquime. He found like some pots. Sorry, he found some pots, and that was his inspiration. He's like, I'm
Wow.
going to make them, and I'm going to figure out how. And he went back in time, like digging around, finding tools, reverse engineering the process, and this is what he came up with. He had a vision. So when I tell people that, it's kind of like their mind opens a little bit and they see what wasn't maybe to them an ordinary piece of pottery, and they see all the work that went through it and all the generations that's in it, and people, artists learning from their grandparents and their parents. Like, there's just so much meaning to that, and that's really what we're trying to bring with our gallery. Like, we're really trying to make them feel at home, like they belong a little bit, to our culture. That's what I want to do. That's kind of also what we're in a house. Like, our gallery's in a house that we turn into a gallery. And I've always liked how in Mexico you say, mi casa es tu casa, my house is your house. Like, to me, that's like, I don't know, like Mexican culture in like in a nutshell, like it's that welcoming that we have.
Hospitality.
The hospitality. Yeah. And that's what I really want, people to feel when they come into our gallery. Like, I don't want them to just come and be like, oh, it's a store. It's like, no, I want you to come and see and learn and experience this. And if you feel the art enough that you want to take a piece of it with you, that's amazing. But first of all, like, I just want you to come here and see and learn.
Absolutely, like a history, not just like a history lesson, but like an experience, like what you're saying. Like, you want it to be a whole experience, and that's what I think too. Like, when you tell us the story about how Mata Ortiz pottery, the genesis of that, I think that connects people. I think that people may have no idea, or maybe they do have an idea, but still, like knowing where it came from, and I think that also helps people understand it and see the value in it. And I think it's not just for art. I think for a lot of things, you can have a vision and then you go out and create it. So it creates, it creates a reciprocal feeling with the piece, because you actually learn something about it. And I think that's something really powerful that our galleries also have. I've been blessed enough to go to a gallery in New York that had pieces from the Meche culture in Peru. They had jewelry from Egypt. They had stuff from all over the world, and obviously that's a different context, but it's still like such an I don't know, like an awakening feeling to be able to see things from the past that are now, for example, for you, that are now being used contemporarily, or even just to see things from the past. It does. There's a really good quote that I really like by a Thai artist, and it says, "Ars long, vita brevis," which means art is long, life is short. So when you make something, it can outlive you, and when you not only can it outlive you, but you're putting a statement that is going to hold true. Like, the story that you shared about Mata Ortiz happened a long time ago, but it still holds true in each and every one single of those pieces that is being made today. So I think there is something really powerful. And again, we go back to this bridging concept, which seems to be really prevalent in our conversation today, because that is bridging the past into the present. And then, you bring people in, and like, now you're bridging their experiences. Like, you don't know, but this is part of you as well. Is what was the experience there. So, yeah, I think that's great.
Yeah, I think it's ultimately the working of the muscle of the subconscious. For me, what we were talking earlier about globalization and the good and bad, right? The economic implications of that, but I think it's just a real thing that's happening. We're on the same planet. It's not as if though the boundaries of nations really create different planetary structures that are powered by their own sun. It's just not the case. And
We still all see under the same sun
yeah,
and the same
yeah,
moon. Absolutely.
and so I think that I'm really my subconscious and my thought process is clarified. Whereas if I don't constantly exercise the muscle of writing, telling a story, creating, using my linguistics to form catharsis and creation from that, I think this process shows just how ahead of the curve El Paso is, and in that we're utilizing technology, we're utilizing these microphones in this space to communicate, what we're communicating right now, and I'm very. This is one of the as me as being a communicator, as an orator, as being a writer, and having done podcasts, a handful of them. I'm not Richie's prolific with his podcast, and his is a natural muscle that he's got to science. For me, this is one of the more efficacious podcasts that I've had, where we've been able to. I'm so glad you showed up. You showed up, and I'm glad you came to partake of the podcast. I'm glad Richie's here. I'm glad that you're here. With the research that you did was awesome, and so I think this is humanity at its best for what it's worth in the moment, right? In that we're augmenting reality, we're capturing it, we're archiving it, and we're creating a platform that is layered and is connecting itself to your platform, your creation, your platform and creation, and mine, and how this will spread and have the ripples that it's going to have the impact of ultimately we're doing God's work, and I don't mean it in a religious standpoint. I mean it more in terms of honoring the ancestors and how to bring about healing to the generations of our past, right? Because how to eviscerate having a complex, having identity issues, having dissonances, and I think this kind of exercise here is something that, like, I feel as though all of us stepped up to the mic, and you all, we put our best foot forward, and I think it's, I think it's one of many to come. I want to make this a consistent thing that we do to help promote your shows, and that way we can better understand the artists that you're working with or that you're representing, and how to systematize it, how to be on top of the game, and how to showcase to the rest of the world that that we are that we are alive, estamos presentes, we're here, and this exercise alone doesn't have to be ordained by or blessed by anybody. It's blessed by the breath of our awareness and our voice and our cognizance and our technology and our presence to honor each other by being aware and being here and supporting each other. So
The present moment is the anointment, really.
absolutely. Absolutely. So I'm going to close this podcast off, and I want to just ask for any closing statements from
I would say,
you
like,
guys.
definitely plug, like, where can people find the gallery, 2 hours, or contact you for that?
Of course. So we are on every social media platform. You can find us on Instagram and Facebook at Flor De Barro Gallery. We also have a website, flordebarrogallery.com. We're open Thursdays and Fridays from 5 to 9 p.m. and then Saturdays and Sundays from 12 to 5. And every other day we're open. You can give us a call, and I live 5 minutes away from the gallery. I am more than happy to open it for you. You don't have to feel like, oh, I have to purchase something if I call them for an appointment. Like, no, it's not like that. It's not that serious. It's like, I'm happy to have a conversation and to open the gallery and for you to see it. Yeah, that's what it's about, and that's really why we open it. I mean, you don't really go into art for the money, do you?
Never.
There's the word. Yeah, all right. I dig it. Yeah, and if anything changes, just follow the social media, hours change or whatever, and you can be kept up to date.
Yeah.
Do you have a online portfolio, or like how can people check out some of your stuff or get in contact
Yeah,
with you?
so right now I'm in the process of creating an artist page and an artist Instagram, so I'll definitely share that when I do. But for now, you can find me on Instagram, Evolving Girl 20, and then also I just want to extend the invitation to everybody to come out to Flor De Barro on October 16th at 6 p.m. to unveil the Tom Lee World Map Travels.
Yes, we'll be posting the link on our Facebook so you can RSVP for the event.
Sweet.
Sweet,
How about
sweet.
yourself, Richie?
Yeah, I mean, so I love it. Yeah, so yeah, my spaces they're for performers, thinkers, poets, writers, singers. Barbed Wire Open Mic Series, so you can hit that up again, social media, Barbed Wire Open Mic Series. If you type it up, it will show up. And yeah, you can follow my work at Dead Wall Reveries on Instagram, or just look up my name, Richie David Matrufo. Spoken word poetry, music, Power at the Pass.
Cool.
You wanna?
Yeah. So again, thank you everybody here for being present and putting your energy out, and let's go ahead and just throw that positive vibe out there, because there's a lot of negatives out there. There's a interdimensional war going on of sorts, and let us be light workers that emanate with confidence. Yeah, I just did say interdimensional war.
No,
right
I
there.
was just
Yeah.
adding to it in my head. Like
What is that?
Interdimensional biomechanical demon monsters.
Bam. Let's take
is,
them
yeah.
down. Take them down by the bull horns, brother. By the
Call them
horns.
out by their name.
Yeah. And it took that turn. Sorry about that. Andrea.
It was ending so nicely. My bad. Sorry.
We are editing this. I can't go
Yeah.
back and
Just
just
wrap it all up.
right now in the post, I'm gonna put that rewind sound and then close off with this.
You're probably wondering how I got here.
Yeah.
You're gonna back
The
forward
portal.
to it.
This is really a portal. Yeah, that's what it is. Again, thank you everybody for listening, and let our audiences grow and expand, and bless our loved ones and our projects, and let us enjoy each other, and thank you for listening, and tune in to the next Power at the Podcast. Peace.
Peace.
Yeah.
Bye.
That was so nice, you